Richard Milhouse Nixon was born on January 9, 1913 in Yorba Linda, California. His father owned a lemon farm, and his mother was a Quaker, which had a great influence on his life. His family did not allow poor language, dancing, or drinking. He had 4 brothers, 2 of which passed away at a young age. Nixon attended Whittier College, a Quaker institution in California. He received his bachelor's degree in politics from Whittier and graduated in 1934. There he was known as a fierce debater and later attended Duke University School of Law, receiving his JD and graduating in 1937. After college, he married Pat Ryan Nixon and moved to Washington, D.C., where he would join the Navy. When duty called during December of 1941, he was an aviation ground officer in the Pacific Front. He saw no combat, but returned with 2 service stars and several commendations. He would earn the highest rank of lieutenant commander. Before Nixon became president, he served as governor of his home state, California, from 1950 until 1953, and served as vice president to Dwight D. Eisenhower during his presidency from 1953 until 1961. In the election of 1960, Nixon and Kennedy both ran for president. Nixon lost by less than a 1% voting margin. He would not have a position in office until he won the next 2 elections in 1968 and in 1972.
In 1969, Nixon proposed a dramatic restructuring of the American government because he believed that bloated federal bureaucracies buried creative entrepreneurship under mountains of red tape and fostered dependency on handouts. The Economy Act of 1970 gave the president power to control wages, prices, rents, salaries, interest rates, and dividends, leading to the unemployment rate reaching a 10-year high of 6%. Nixon also increased the gold standard by $3 to $38 and then by $4 to $42 at the end of his second term, leading to a national recession. New federalism directed money and power away from the federal government institutions and municipalities, which was a part of restoring political authority to the local level. And it also played a role in segregation by lowering all black schools from 70% to 18%, but still had locally controlled segregation. Nixon proposed the reformation of multiple environmental protection programs, including ones for air, water, land, waste, and endangered species, into one big agency with different divisions called the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. In 1970, and later oversaw the passage of the Clean Air Act and Mammal Marine Protection Act.
One of Nixon's first jobs as president was dealing with the war in Vietnam. What his plan was to start removing troops while still fighting the Vietnamese. It was called Vietnamization, and he did this so that the South Vietnamese could take a more active role in the war. By August of 1969, the first 25,000 troops had returned home. The policy was known as Peace with Honor. After he had returned over 500,000 troops, he ordered a secret massive bombing campaign against supply routes and bases in northern Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. After the war had ended, President Nixon visited the People's Republic of China in 1972 as an open diplomatic relation. Also, Nixon initiated détente and the anti-ballistic missile treaty with the Soviet Union to try to achieve peace after the Cold War.
Richard Nixon's environmental plans are related to Teddy Roosevelt's because of how they improved awareness for the environment during their terms as president. Nixon funded the Environmental Protection Agency, which protects human health and the environment and ensures that Americans are protected from significant risks to environmental problems where they live, work, or enjoy downtime around. Roosevelt made a significant effort to clean up parks and polluted areas to give America tourist attractions and thus protecting them from significant risks.
If, when the chips are down, the world's most powerful nation acts like a pitiful, helpless giant, forces of totalitarianism and anarchy will threaten free nations throughout the world. Nixon was not so popular towards the end of his presidency. However, he had impounded about $15 billion, affecting more than 100 federal programs, including health, housing, and education. The Nixon administration left so many concealed activities that the U.S. didn't trust him anymore. The Pentagon Papers hurt his reputation. This revealed events like bombing supply routes and bases as he was withdrawing troops. Nixon lost a lot of support throughout his presidency, and then came Watergate. Nixon had illegally wiretapped numerous people and organizations, and he got caught. Watergate was a break-in at the Democratic National Committee, where he bugged the offices of political opponents. This led to an investigation where the FBI, CIA, and IRS discovered he had been involved in many illegal events, and this led to his resignation.
I now believe that the constitutional purpose has been served, and there is no longer a need for the process to be prolonged. The nation will require. I have never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first. America needs a full-time president and a full-time Congress, particularly at this time with problems we face at home and abroad. To continue to fight through the months ahead for my personal vindication would almost totally absorb the time and attention of both the President and the Congress in a period when our entire focus should be on the great issues of peace abroad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
On April 22, 1994, Nixon died of a stroke at the age of 81. His legacy as president lives on, and his headstone on his grave is engraved with, quote, "The greatest honor in history can bestow is the title of peacemaker."